Welcome to The Plain Truth, the show where we go into some of the mysteries, anomalies, and the dirty underbelly of the world around us. I'm your host, Paul, and joining us this week, we have Sharry Edwards, who is known for her work dealing with voice analysis, all the amazing things that we can find out, health, sincerity, all kinds of things from voice. Sharry, are you there?
I'm here.
Good.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah?
It's great to be here, and I get to spill all the things we've been working on all week.
Cool. Well, I tell you what, before we get started, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, or at least the work you've done, and then we'll get into some of your recent work.
Well, today I am the director of the Institute of Bioacoustic Biology, which is a school that teaches people everything that we do, which is looking at the voice. We stick a microphone in front of your face and look at all the octaves and sour notes and frequencies and notes, and we can tell things. For instance, we were on national radio on the 15th, I believe it was, or the 16th, and we said that Biden is not going to run. His heart's not in it. His spirit's not in it. And here's all these people on the radio and TV. Oh, he's absolutely going to run. He's going to announce, blah, blah, blah. We repeated it then again on Tuesday evening on our own radio show. And then on the 21st, 6 days later, he announced he wasn't going to run. So we knew it from his voice before it was announced officially. It's like most people know about what we do. They just don't realize it. Think about a young man going through puberty and his voice changes in response to hormones. Well, we've been able to look at the frequencies in the voice, like notes in a song, and tell what those hormones were. And we took it steps further. Now we can look at genomes, we can look at pathogens, traumas, nutrients, whether or not you're going to get Alzheimer's, all kinds of things from your voice. We were announced also that Robin Williams had dementia before it was ever announced to the public, which is a big project that we want to do, and I'll tell your listeners more about it in a bit. But we have a free 2-day class coming up on Alzheimer's, and people get the class and materials and software for free because we think this is absolutely an important thing that we want to do for the public. Does that explain it enough?
Sure. Yeah, that's good. So, well, I guess you got into this, in a sense, dealing with health, right? An analysis of health.
Sort of, kind of. I really got into it because I have very unusual hearing. I can hear much like a dog hears a whistle that a human wouldn't. And so I didn't know other people didn't hear that. And so over the last 30 years, we have done a lot of research on it. When I found out that my ears were constructed differently, I was working myself through school and was working in a speech and hearing department, and they tested my hearing, and it was off the scale. And I knew I was hearing sounds from people's ears, but everybody said that was just too weird, and they thought it was psychic ability. I have this idea, I can't prove it yet, but there are frequencies coming out of your ear. And the interruptions in those frequencies with other people's words and frequencies give us meaning to what's going on. The problem is people hear the words and they know that they're lies and they're in sort of a dissonance that they don't know what to do with. So what we've done is create computer programs that will record the words and tell you whether or not those are lies or where they're really going with the words that they're trying to cram down your throat or down your ears.
Well, that's interesting. So you have a theory that sounds come out of your ears as well as go in.
Yes, and it's been proven by Johns Hopkins University now that there really is a sound coming out of your ear. It's called an oto, meaning ear, acoustic, meaning sound. They think, well, there's a lot of different theories. They think it's coming from the little anvil and stuff in your ear, little bone and an anvil they teach about in school, and I can't think of the name of it in a minute right now. But I think it's coming from your brain, that your brain works on frequency. Your brain speaks frequency as math. And so everything coming and going in your body goes through the brain or to the brain as a frequency for interpretation. And then the brain gives out signals or frequencies that people can really hear on some level, but they don't know what to do with it.
Well, that raises all kinds of questions, I mean, you've probably heard about the idea of reverse speech.
Absolutely. David Oates.
Yeah, have you ever looked into that? Do you think there might be something there that? Mm-hmm.
It is. I think so, because I think that's how mediums or people who are psychic, that's how they really pick up things backwards and forwards. I met David Oates at a workshop, big expo thing, and walked up to him because I was so curious about reverse speech. That must be wonderful. And he said, well, just tell me something about your favorite number, but don't tell me what it is. And I said, I don't want to tell you anything about my favorite number. And reverse speech said, your favorite number, and it was sort of weird, your favorite number is 7. And my favorite number is 7. I had a woman next to me, and she was trying to sell her condominium, and she said, let me try that. And she was just talking about she couldn't find anybody to buy her house. In reverse, it said, Libby will always find or always have a place to stay. And that was her daughter in college. So we sort of program ourselves for what we really want, and we try to push ourselves for what society is expecting from us. And that's why we have a free computer program for anybody to test themselves, that they can talk to this little computer program about a minute and a half, and it'll give them answers as to what's really going on, whether it's solid, whether it's naive, whether it's fantasy, whether it's justice, whether it's their ego, whether they're sick. It's on our website. It's called NanoVoice, N-A-N-O, voice.org, or you can get it from soundhealthoptions.com, either one. There's 2 tutorials there for people to show them how to use it. There's a textbook there for them. Everything they would need to do this. And you could start a business with this, but and many people have, but our real reason for it was that we wanted to prove to people that there's information in your voice that tell other people about you. But we also realize that by knowing what's real, we're going to start a lot of arguments. If you ask your significant other, did you have an affair? And they say, no, absolutely not, and it shows totally false, I think we're going to start a lot of arguments. But
that's a safe bet.
What would the world be like if everybody had to tell the truth? It'd probably fall apart for a while. So that's why we're kind of going slow with it, giving these programs away one at a time. Actually, we've given nearly 100,000 of them away. And people are using them to look at the balance in their voice, like balance in a song, balance in the voice. Like you have a very soft voice. I haven't looked at it yet, but I will. And there's a lot of E. There's a lot of E in your voice. So do you have allergies?
Yes.
Like nasal allergies? Because that's the frequencies that are coming up. And some little bit of back, hip, lower pain. Or stress, not really pain, just stress. So I'm just picking that up from hearing your voice.
Well, both of those are correct. And I'm visiting Hong Kong at the moment. And I'm sensitive to smog. And the air quality is not the best here, walking around on the streets. And so my nose is a little bit stuffed up at the moment. And the lower back pain is definitely a problem I've had for off and on for years. But traveling around, carrying suitcases and, hauling things has probably made it worse. So those are right on, spot on. And what does E generally mean?
Wet, moist tissues, oxygenation at a cellular level. So when I look at your voice, I see a lot of very gut level information. Like what you do comes from a very solid upbringing of integrity. Also gives you, I don't know how polite to be, gives you some hormonal issues.
Hormonal issues. Well, I don't know. That could be interpreted a number of ways. But I'm not a young man anymore, so that's behind me. if that's part of what hormonal questions would involve. But if I may ask, where are you heavy on? If I'm heavy on E, what are you heavy on?
D sharp.
And that's what does that imply?
An information broker, somebody who wants to serve people with information. It also opens people to a stressed use of dopamine. And I did about 3 years ago start to have some tremors like Parkinson's, but using another program that we have called Parkinson's Commons, we were able to stop it and reverse it and get my body to use dimethylglycine. I can't remember the other one. But we can artificially entrain people's brain with frequencies that they have missing or frequencies that they have too much of. We've been able to turn around a lot of people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And we just had a lady in last week that had gone to every kind of doctor she could think of. And it was so obvious in her vocal print that she had some kind of bacterial infection. And the vocal print even showed what kind of antibacterial medication she should be taking. But it was so obvious. I don't see why the other 10 doctors she went to didn't pick it up. But it's all in the vocal print.
Well, medicine, it takes them 200 years to change, right? So I think it's going to be a long wait before they want to use new stuff. I mean, they're only getting around to using Listerine. No, just kidding. But and vitamin C in the British Navy took over 100 years, right?
Well, we're going to push them a little bit because we are going to give away workshops that will allow people to monitor their own health, because I have some strange, well, maybe you won't think they're strange, but a lot of people do. I have some ideas about what's going on, at least in America. Can I explain?
Sure, go for it.
Well, think about human behavior. There's greed, give me more, I want more, like the leader of the pack, so to speak, takes the best pieces of meat, and the lions and the dogs and whoever else. So I think the greed in humans has turned us into an economic problem in our society. And then they want power. I'm the top dog. I'm right. You're wrong. And I think that's turned into our legal system. And usually we in the United States are only hit with one thing at a time. Either they're trying to take our rights away or they're trying to take our money away. Those two issues. Right now, they're trying to take both with the economy and threatening all these other taxes. I have a business, and it's a nonprofit business, registered nonprofit, but we still pay 64% of our income in taxes of some kind or another, whether it's payroll taxes or IRS taxes or state taxes, and it's ridiculous. That means that we work 6-7 months a year to pay taxes. Sometimes it doesn't even seem worth it unless I can look at some things like right now that we're looking at, that the new flu vaccines, it looks like these flu vaccines over the last few years have in them the frequencies that are causing this big boom of Alzheimer's. But let's go back for a minute, because there's something else that's incredibly important here. I think that whoever controls health controls the quality of life. And that's what I want to put in the hands of the people, because I'm seeing a trend. Right now, we've had people coming in and talking to us about their prescriptions. And there's one drug, and I think it's for AIDS, that it went from $13.50 a pill up to $750 a pill overnight. And it's a drug called Daraprim, Daraprim. And it's because some economic person bought out the rights to the drug. Now, people who have this infectious disease have to have these drugs. So from $13.50 to $750 a pill overnight. Now, we had a lady in today, and she takes something called Binocar. And the last prescription she got was $36. Today, they wanted $412. We started looking online to see where people could get this Binocar, which is a high blood pressure drug. And it's still available in Canada for $84 for, I think, 60 tablets of it. But think about this. When it costs that much, these people who need this drug are on Obamacare or some other kind of subsidy, and they can't buy these pills themselves, $750 a pill, and you take it once a day. That's just ridiculous. But it's a way of control. The next step is going to be, if you don't take your vaccine that we dictate, if you don't eat this food that we dictate, if you don't live here that we dictate, if you don't do this, if you don't kill your neighbor, I'm getting outrageous, but that's where it's going. Think about that. They're going to control you, the big pharma in bed with the government. They're going to control injections, medication. You're going to send your kid here. You're going to do this. You're going to have this job, or you can't have this medication. And that's just one road. Another road to this is, and I'll give an example of another woman. She needed something that you use for diabetes. They're little, good grief, I can't think of the name of them, testing strips. And when she got them from her insurance company, these testing strips, her part of the bill was $10.30. The whole bill was $160. But she could go buy it from her local grocery store, pharmacy, for $4. So if they're forcing her to buy it on her insurance and pay 2.5 times what it costs at the grocery store, but they're actually billing insurance, which ultimately gets paid for by the people. These insurance companies are overbilling Medicare and Obamacare and whatever else kind of care by 20, 30 times as much. It's crazy. And that's how they're going to control us. When you think about whoever controls the quality of life controls the people. And that's why we are looking at, we started with pain medication. We now can provide pain medication with sound. But I am taking a big step in even announcing that, because the next thing they're going to come to us about is you're practicing medicine without a license. I believe that the universe sends me things that I need to do. And I recently fell off of a 2-story balcony and broke my back in 3 places. So I'm in pain. So I'm using myself as a guinea pig. And the other people who are helping us do this are all volunteering as guinea pigs to see what this is really like. We aren't bringing people into our clinical services side of our business and saying we can cure pain. That's not it. We're doing research with this. But think about if people want to be on a medication, they can just dial it in with a little machine. Or there are 3 things in the body that are natural painkillers that if that shows up in your vocal print as something lacking, we can show you how to entrain your brain with those frequencies, no matter what it is. And they're also doing a big project with marijuana to see if they can dial marijuana in or any other kind of drug. Because if you can dial in a painkiller, why not dial in a hallucinogenic? The other 2 things in the body, substance P is something they look for in the blood when you go into the emergency room. And the higher the substance P, the higher the pain. So the body is really trying to control the pain on its own. But pain is for a good thing. It tells you don't do that. And the other 2 are 2 kinds of enkephalin, and they're same things that happens when you get a runner's high. So there are natural things in the body that you can give by frequency and allow the body to do its own thing, without the interference of some kind of morphine or something. So I think that's a pretty incredible piece that we want to give away to your public, your audience, any audience, so they can go look on soundhealthoptions.com under downloads. And right now is that little nano voice there. And we also have a free program to the people who are concerned about radiation exposure. We have seen so many people with Parkinson's, or they say it's Parkinson's, and really they've been overexposed to radiation. We had a woman in about 2 weeks ago, and she was cesium poisoned. And the computer was able to tell us that, and then we were able to help her find a way to detox that cesium. But she had lived in California, and it was affecting her teeth. It was just affecting every aspect of her body, was just going downhill. And that's what the radiation does, just in this case go ahead.
Sharry, have you seen a dramatic increase in radiation issues? In other words, is this from Fukushima, or what do you think?
I think it's from Fukushima, and I think the government must think we're pure stupid for them to just raise the level of what ought to be safe and try to tell us it's safe. When we had 2 or 3 people in Japan when this happened who were trained bioacoustic technicians, and we offered to give them 10,000 copies of this radiation exposure. And they said, we can't accept it. Our government told us everything is all right. I'm flabbergasted at how much the government of almost every country says, you're okay, don't worry about it. And we swallow it. Good grief. I see America right now as like some stupid soap opera. Only we're not the audience out here watching both sides of this manipulation on the soap opera. We're one side being manipulated. But think about, what is there, 435 representatives and 100 senators? That's less than 1,000 people who really have some control over 300 million people. And if I can provide people the tools to know what's really going on, that's what I want to do. And can we afford it? Absolutely not. But I'm going to do it anyway because I think it concerns the future of America, just like we did to all the presidential candidates, because I wanted people to know the truth about what was really going on from each of those. And people can use this little nano voice to test the speeches of their own candidates in their own state.
Well, Sharry, I'd like to get into that, I guess you'd say, more political or whatever, but let's stay with health for a little bit, if I could. kind of get some
Okay.
more details on that. So let's say you had somebody who had radiation poisoning. Were you able to then put detox frequencies in, or what can you do in that case?
We created some charts for people to tell them what the radiation is competing with and what it's dampening in their body. That too is on that site, soundhealthoptions.com, under radiation, and then on the lower right-hand side, there's charts that they can look at. But we also have a lot of trained bioacoustic technicians that could help them dispel it with sound. They could go to someone who would help them detox. Vitamin D seems to be a biggie. That's a problem that this, I'm writing myself a note here to tell you something about flu. So yes, we try to help them find somebody in their area that will help detox from a cellular level. That's the problem. The biggest problem I see with radiation is it doesn't go to your fingernail or whatever. Well, one of them, the iodine, goes to your thyroid, but they go to every cell in the body. And that's a very hard thing to undo, except with something like sound that will go into every nook and cranny of the body. And they're lying to us so much about our health and what's going on with it. There is MARKION, nutrition. And I don't know if I can put this in chat or a link for you, but this guy tells how the government and how pharmaceutical companies are lying to us about how good a pharmaceutical is. It's the difference between an absolute truth, something between absolute and relative risk, and how they're selling us these pills and then just ruining our health, like statins. We've looked at statins and how they degrade the muscle, and when somebody's coming in and they're on a statin, what kind of damage that's caused to the body. It's incredible what we can look at in terms of what nutrition is doing in each cell. So that's our target. Everything gets to the brain as a frequency. You smell something, and that's a certain frequency. I think it's about 60,000 cycles per second. I can't remember. But that goes from the nose. It changes it into electrical chemical energy and sends it to your brain. And your brain interprets it as a certain range. So I'm going to say, well, that's a smell. Or you can hear from about 20 to 20,000 cycles per second. The ear receives that mechanical energy, changes it into electrical chemical energy, sends it to the brain, and the brain says, that's auditory input. Everything happens in that way. And we just found a way to intercede with the signals that are going to the brain. And it's phenomenal, some of the things that sound is able to do, back off arthritis and pain and autism and seizures and heart problems and restructure heart valves. And I mean, there are so many profiles on our site that people can go look at. And there's free videos also under downloads. It's under Secret Stash. And there's one called Miracles of Non-Medicine. Things that people have had, like prostate cancer. And one guy ripped his leg off in a motorcycle accident. And the sound was able to help him rebuild that leg and go ahead and rebuild the body back to optimal form and function. So we don't know all what we can do. We know some things we can't do. We're not good at snake bite. We sent those people to the hospital. We have been able to look at people's vocal prints in groups. Like, here's a big group of cancer patients. And what's common in those cancer patients? 3 things. Catalase, which is an enzyme that cleans up the blood, the frequency for vitamin A, and then something called calcitonin. And calcitonin keeps calcium active in the body. And without the calcitonin controlling the calcium and keeping it active, cancer can happen in the body. Because cancer food and 5-HETE, which is 5-HETE, and calcium are almost the same frequency. So if you look at some of James Janjuski's work or James Oshman, they show that here's a little cell, and the cell gets traumatized, and it sends out a signal, send me a frequency, send me a frequency. And calcium comes to the site as the master controller and says, okay, we need this and put this there, and it fixes what's going on. So if there's no calcium available, then this 5-HETE, cancer food, which is the same frequency, gets called to the cell because the body can't tell the difference between calcium and 5-HETE because they're both just a frequency. And there's another big one about aspartame, which does the same thing, and I'll tell you about that in a second. So when we look at cancer patients, we found out here's 3 very common things. And if we fix those, that first level, then the body begins to reverse the cancer. The other thing is to look at their hormones, particularly testosterone, and to look at their Krebs cycle, which is the energy cycle, the vitamin C cycle of the body, which both of those energize the body. So if we can keep the body energized and keep the calcium doing what it ought to do, then the body can reverse its own cancer. There is a doctor in Texas, Brzezinski Clinic, and he reverses cancer, I think with something called nomatids. And one of the frequencies we've been using for years is the same frequency as one of his biochemicals that he uses. So here's this great big grid of frequency, and that's really, we're just frequency-based robots, and we just found a way to jump in and control the proteins in the body. The DNA makes your pattern, and the RNA controls the pattern, and we've been able to control that pattern with frequency. What we found is that people with similar injuries, traumas, diseases, personality traits, and on, have similar, if not identical, vocal anomalies. So we can look at your print now and say, oh, you're heading for this. My print says I'm heading for kidney issues. So I'm going to take some steps now to take some herbs to support my kidneys. But we did a big project for the Army too, and this is another one, and we'll do it for a community. If anybody out there wants to pull their community together to do this, we'll do it for free, and we'll give them the software. But we did a project for the Army for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injury for the people who are in these wars, who step on these acoustic bombs and blasts. And we found out there's 4 issues, 2 layers of 4 issues with PTSD. And I think this is why these soldiers are coming back and committing suicide. Every day, what is it, the average now is 22 soldiers commit suicide. We found an issue with this, that giving them all of these vaccines and shots really burns out their adrenals and their ability to cope. And the first level is calcium, niacin, linolenic acid, and zinc. And when those go, these folks don't know they're ill. Everybody else sees it around them, but they can't realize it. The second layer is choline, magnesium, progesterone. Good grief, I forget the other one. But these are I'll think of it in a minute. These people are the ones that know they're ill, but don't know how to cope. The software, PTSD, and we gave it away for months for people. If you have somebody in your family that you love who has this issue, B5 is the other one. So that second layer then is choline, magnesium, progesterone, and B5. If you have somebody in your family and you'll give us back data, because that's really what we're looking for, and you want to get a group together, we'll teach you how to use this software, and we'll give you the software if you'll agree to give us back data. This is the way that we think we can help stop this PTSD problem, at least for the United States. I think, too, there's a secondary issue here, that if the soldiers that are coming back, if they put them in such a state that they kill themselves, there'll be less people to defend the people. But that's just my paranoid pieces about this. But we have shown that it's something is ruining the adrenals, and it's very similar to what's ruining the adrenals of these kids that end up having problems with digestion and mental ability. Are you familiar with Andrew Molden's work?
No.
He was a Canadian MD, PhD. His specialty was the brain. He was a neurophysiologist. Okay. He proved that giving these children these vaccines caused micro strokes. We had been saying that for years, that the blood clotting of these kids are really getting distorted. Sharry Tenpenny has picked up his work, but look at it, micro strokes. Okay. So when you look at these young kids, autism is a young child's Alzheimer's, because the symptoms are so similar to where the brain is just getting clogged up with wrong kinds of signals and serum amyloids. So that's another project that we did and helped back off autism in kids. But we'd lots rather teach people to do this on their own than do it for them. It's a lot less expensive if we just give you the software and help you learn to work with all this.
Can you see good progress in fighting people with microstrokes?
We can. We've helped people totally get back use of hands and speech, and yes, we've done that a lot. There's probably several of those videos on our site.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'll check into that. I'm much more familiar with herbs and things like Chinese medicine and such, and of course those are largely frequency based.
Yes,
right? I mean,
absolutely.
That's what's actually the defining force behind it, I think.
Well, if you look at something like foxglove, which they get digitalis from, let's say foxglove has 5 different constituents. They took one and made digitalis out of it, but those other 4 things they left out of that herb is what's going to cause the side effects. If they would if they're going to create unnatural medicines, at least create it in a way that Mother Nature knew best over millions of years and put it all in there. That's why I think herbs are so much superior to medication.
Yes, and what's funny is they sell us with the idea that their bad points are good. In other words, have you noticed that? They sell the idea that we're clean and pure, and therefore we don't have all the other things that Mother Nature put in there. It's quite annoying. Quite annoying that they intentionally promote. They're shameless. Let's just put it that way. I tell you what, a question, because I think for a lot of listeners, and then for me as well, with allergies, is that typically a fairly straightforward thing to improve? I mean, is it just like there's a sound or two, a frequency or two that typically works well in making them less bad?
Yes, if people will cooperate. I am allergic to thin-skinned bananas, but I didn't know why until we did a vocal print and found out that in a thick-skinned banana, the gas is still in the thick skin, but a thin-skinned banana, the gas is the problem because it goes into the banana. Now, if I'm allergic to that and I keep eating thin-skinned bananas, the problem's not going to go away easily. we'd have to find out why your body, how it's using histamines and methionine. We'd have to see what your body tells us is the issue for this. And we do have a program called allergies. And there are videos on our site under radio to show you how to use these softwares. We do a program on Tuesday evening on the radio. It's called Happy Hour. And we do demonstrations of how to do each of the softwares. And it's free for people. People volunteer, and then we can do their vocal print right on the air.
Okay. Well, I hope people get a chance to check that out. In my case, I know that I'm particularly sensitive to smog or exhausts from cars. And there may be other factors, of course, but I'm just saying that's the one that stands out the most. And
toxin particulates in all of that. So we'd see how your lungs and nose clear those things, or which ones, and then we'd give you a frequency antidote to it. But also look at the nutrition. Your body's supposed to take care of things like that and not let you get allergic. When you get so overloaded with it, then that's when the allergic symptoms come out. I want to share something with your audience. There's a lady named Gwen Olson, and she wrote a book, Confessions of a Pharmaceutical Rep. She was so good at her job at selling pills to doctors that they put her in charge of training these doctors. And shortly after that, when she really got to see what they were training them for, she quit her job. There's an interview of her with Jeff Hayes, who did the movie Doctored, and then there's another one called Bought. She's in the one called Doctored. But we bought a ticket, a $2,000 ticket for people to watch Bought if they want to on us, and it's on the front page of our website. You don't have to fill in your name or anything else, I don't think. It's just, there it is. Go listen to it, and we're going to keep it up as long as people are looking at it. We don't tell who's looking at it, but we can tell people are looking at it. So as long as it's interesting to people, it's there on the front page. There's also a couple articles there, one called The Potential of Math as Medicine, and that was accepted by a Stanford University conference. And people are really looking at this, which are looking at the idea of frequencies, which brings me back to something else. Gardasil. You heard of Gardasil shots that they mandated in Texas, and now they're telling these kids in California they can get them without telling their parents, even though they can kill you? Well, we looked at Gardasil, and 4 or 5 of the frequencies are infertility biochemicals. And when you look at, I gotta find DAR. When you look at the references that we looked up in this article, there was millions of dollars given to target rural America, like where I live and out on a farm, and poor inner city kids. I think they were trying to cause infertility in people they thought maybe were stupid, because we're seeing a gaggle of these people come in and they're infertile, and we trace it down and it's one of these Gardasil frequencies. So I think they're doing that with the flu shots that I see is causing the Alzheimer's, or at least bioacoustically they're the same frequencies as some of these flu shots. But in looking at what is going on in our healthcare and how people are going downhill so rapidly with statins, which is to reduce cholesterol, and then Gardasil with fertility, and the PTSD and adrenal mineral depletion. I mean, it just seems like everything's going down at once. This quality of life thing, if you don't feel good and you don't have energy, you can't get up and fight. Is that what they're going for? And I'm talking about the big pharma in bed with the government, and the government approving this. and the FDA approving things. And if you pay more, you get on a faster track. It takes millions of dollars now to get a drug through on a fast track. And then they end up having all of these side effects and recalls because they aren't being tested properly. Look at that CDC thing that the whistleblower came out, and it's now in Congress and they're dealing with it. The CDC deliberately withheld information. I think it was the MMR, measles, mumps, rubella shot, caused serious side effects with young black kids, males particularly. They aren't telling the truth about what these things are doing to us. But they're also trying to manipulate us into having to take them. There is a informed consent movement on the going on, that you can get a little card and say, you don't have informed consent to shoot me up with some vaccine. And if you have that on your person, they're not supposed to give you flu shots or whatever, which they can do if you're in a jail population, if you go into a hospital setting. They want to give you that. And part of what's going on with the hospitals is if you don't have a certain percentage, and like 99% of your staff vaccinated against this, and this, then they're not going to pay you for the services that you've done. It's blackmail. And it's all geared toward depleting our health reserves.
Well, Sharry, I think there's a bigger game afoot. It's practically a spiritual thing. They're trying to destroy everything. And, if it were only happening in one or two locations, you could say this is just greed or something. But they'll pay money and jump through hoops in order to kill us. So obviously there's a little bit more than just, a few dollars at stake. So I think we got a huge fight ahead, to be honest. I think they want us sick or dead.
Well, that's why I'm providing the tools, and people have to buy a microphone, and it's about $25. If I had zillions of dollars, I'd buy them the microphones. But we are running on a shoestring. I haven't cashed a paycheck in almost 3 years, trying to put enough money in this company to distribute these softwares to the people. It's our lives depend on our humanity. Humankind depends on us being able to be self-responsible and not take these handouts that are going on. This is my soapbox.
Hey, I tell you what, now is probably a good time to move on to the second topic, which is more like not just health, but say analyzing the sincerity of people or things like that. So I know you wanted to mention briefly maybe some public figures or things like that. Is there anything on that you could tell our audience?
Well, are you interested in the presidential debates?
Well, I live outside the U.S. I mean, to a limited, most listeners are Americans, but sure. I mean, I think everybody wants to know a little bit about, let's say, Trump or Bernie Sanders or maybe Jeb and Hillary. Just do they seem depressed, ecstatic? What do you think? Who's going to win? That kind of thing.
Well, the last thing we did on Hillary was where she testified in that Benghazi mess. And it showed that she was very practiced, that the information a lot of the times coming from her really was coming from someone else. It wasn't spontaneous at all. And I think that little smirk that she did was when somebody asked a question that her group had already asked her and prompt her how to answer. She is not a truthful person. She lives up in fantasy. And from her vocal print about running for president, I don't think she wants the job at all. She wants the idea that she was the first woman president, the first wife of a president. She just wants her place in history. She doesn't want the job.
Okay. What about Bernie Sanders?
Sanders. He's not doing this from ego, and I'm just reading bits of information from the evaluations we've done, and we will be putting this up. He's not doing it from ego, but he doesn't believe he can win, which really shows strong in his voice. Is a balance between what he sees and how he's going to solve a problem. And there's non-belief in he can win because a lot of his information is in a level of fantasy in his voice. He's been convinced that it would help others if he could win. A lot of energy in a male octave, especially a good balance between management and ideas. But he himself doesn't think he can win. He has a very similar kind of vocal print that somebody in the last election had. He played on one of those Law and Order shows, and he and Bernie Sanders have almost identical kinds of vocal prints where they're saying they're doing it because they think they can make a difference, but they really don't think they're going to win. And this other guy, if anybody can think of what the name is, he dropped out early. But he was some kind of an attorney on Law and Order.
Well, I'm not really sure of that. What about, let's say, Jeb Bush? How is he coming across?
Jeb Bush. He's the most visionary person. And if we were just doing this on vocal prints, I don't like the words he's saying and what he's going for, but if we were just going on vocal prints, Jeb Bush would be the winner. The other person that is really close to him as a visionary is Ted Cruz. They have very similar vocal prints, but Cruz doesn't have that boyish charisma looks that Cruz has. Bush is ego-driven, and you can't feel that from his very soft-spoken, boyish face. But you look at him, and his ego is just really, really strong. But he knows what, at a gut level, what he needs to do. He'll not take instruction from anybody. He wants to help people, but that's in a fantasy layer for him. He's so split between mental stuff and action, he doesn't know which way to go. His emotions, he loves humanity. He's got a very strong F sharp, which is a balance between perception and action. But of all of them, his voice print isn't like his dad's, nor is it like his brother. He has more vision than any of them. I don't particularly like his platform, but his voice, if people just listen to his voice, even though he's way down in the polls, he would be the person that would win.
Okay, well, how about the man of the hour, so to speak, Donald Trump?
I've said this for ages about Donald Trump, and I was surprised when all of his information, not all of it, most of his information comes out in a naive, childlike octave. You wouldn't think that from the bullying he does with his words. But I don't think he's in to stay. I think he just wanted his finger on what actions, what issues were going to be brought up. I think he did the same thing last election when he brought up all that birther stuff, and that wasn't his idea either. When it's their idea, their solid idea, they have a really strong set of numbers across the bottom of the chart. He doesn't have it. It's all up in fantasy and childlike naivete. And the only way, if he really ends up running, it's because somebody told him he couldn't. And that's exactly what Obama did, that Trump can't stay in, he's not going to win. The other way they could go after Trump is to try to attack his people who would vote for him, saying they're dumb and stupid to vote for him. But I don't think he's really interested in the job. What idiot would be interested in taking on the presidency of the United States, taking on 300 million people's problems? They'd have to be an egotistical fool. And about the only one in the whole bunch that isn't that egotistical is Huckabee. But I don't think he's going to stay in either. But I don't think Trump's in it for the long haul at all.
Okay, from their voices, can you get a feeling of who is, let's say, confident that they'll win?
Marco Rubio is confident that he could win because there is an octave of non-reality where very godlike people speak, and he's getting direction of whether or not he should be a candidate from God, or at least his voice is in that octave. The other one that's in that octave is Carson, but he is in the octave of how can I do this? How can I carry it out? In the beginning, I didn't think Carson had a snowball's chance because I didn't think anybody, and this may be totally prejudiced on my part, but I thought people would see what Obama did to the country and they just wouldn't trust an Afro-American again. I think they would hold Obama against Carson, but they're two totally different personalities. Do you remember the prayer breakfast where Carson first came out and talked about leadership?
Yes.
Where he was saying left wing and right wing need to work together. You know, the eagle is the symbol, and Obama and the White House demanded an apology from him, and he wouldn't give it. And I thought, that's a man with conviction right there. But he sees a lot of things from a mental perspective, thinking about it, what's just. He displays incredibly strong ideas of justice. He has a lot of really good foundation. And I loved his answer to when he was challenged because he was non-political. He said what was really needed to do things right is a brain. I loved that piece. But I think we are so fed up with political people, they're willing to take a chance on anybody non-political to get the job done. So Carson, Trump, and Fiorina are all non-political people. But of those three, I think Carson would be the leader. I think Fiorina would make a very good project director or manager. She's interested in getting things physically done. She's good at from planning to fruition. But one of the things that might do her in is she wants everything she does to be for the benefit of all concerned. And boy, trying to keep all the campers happy is a big job.
Yeah, what about on the Democratic side? What would be the two or three who...
We're looking at Hillary, split octaves. She and Obama vie for the top bioacoustic liars.
Okay. Well, I think that the higher up you are, the more you lie or something. But hey, I tell you what, before I forget, I got a question. Okay. Some of these figures have been around a while, like Hillary or Jeb. Are their voice prints today similar to their voice prints, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago?
Hillary's is. I don't have any for Jeb that long ago. But Hillary is always shown bioacoustically to be a manipulator, to be scattered. I think that's why she had to practice so much. I think that's why she got caught saying, "What difference does it make?" You know, that these four people are dead. I did a comparison of her and Obama's speech when Stevens and his three companions came home from Benghazi, where they saying it was absolutely this film, absolutely. And I downloaded that because I knew it's going to come back to bite her. And now in these Benghazi hearings, she has said, I never said that. And there she is right on tape saying it. And you knew from there, normal score is 42. Hillary and Obama both run between 700 and 1,000 in lying. But they're public figures. I may get in trouble for saying they're lying. I can just say bioacoustically, their vocal print indicates they are not telling the truth.
Mm.
So she's scattered, she's manipulative, she's egotistical, she's intellectual. That's probably why she can't relate to the people. All of her ego stuff is in future octaves. So again, her martyrdom is in intellectual octaves. She thinks she's the best person for the job, and I think she's like Obama. She's just so out of touch with what the country needs.
What if I may ask, what's a future octave?
Well, you have middle C octave, like 100, 260 cycles per second. Well, let's just do it in even numbers. So if you had 200 as a cycle per second, 100 would be a layer under that, 50 would be a layer under that, 25, and 1250. So there's different layers. And if you're looking at a fantasy octave, it is one octave above middle C. You wouldn't hear this in the voice, but the computer program picks it up. It's a very high voice, something up in here.
Okay.
So it's not something where you would sing in, except maybe an opera singer, but it's in the voice. We wrote the computer program to pick up these odd octaves in the voice and play them in different layers. Like your note of E, it's around 20 cycles per second. And then it would be 40, and then 80, and then 160. So when you open the computer program, there's a graph there that shows you the layers of the voice and what each note means. This is a really a sophisticated course in interpretation of the voice that we've tried to lay out for the people. And they can also come to any of the things that we do on Tuesday evenings, and that's announced on our site under radio. And it's all free, and a lot of times we give away software to the people who attend. Not every time, but a lot of times.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So what about some other things in terms of, like, I guess just a couple of things off the top of my head. Let's say, what would be like the lying number or value for an actor or a doctor or whatever? What are some of the things we can learn from the voice from different people we might run across in life or see on television?
Well, let's look at an actor. Let's look at Christian Bale first. Do you remember 2 or 3 years ago when he was playing Batman, and there was a big thing splattered all over the news that he bitched out a guy, a photographer who came in front of the lights, and he said the F word about 50 times in 3 minutes, and it was all over the news that he had done this and he was a petulant person and blah, blah, blah. We analyzed his voice as a project in the film department because I teach there every year. And we looked at his voice, and if that had been a spontaneous thing, his vocal print would have had a lot of red in it. If it was emotional, it would have had a lot of blue, and all of these graphs are on the site. But it had a lot of green in it, which means accomplish and do. And this whole thing was nothing but a publicity stunt. It wasn't anything spontaneous at all. But when you look at A sharp and E together, those need to match in color and in amount, or the person is probably fibbing to you.
Well, it makes sense that actors would be performers, right? Or for that matter, politicians might be performers.
Yes, well, look at how many are lawyers. And remember, in a courtroom, there's always two sides. And sometimes in mock court, they make you take the other side. So they're used to looking at things in different realms or different ways. 6% of the U.S. population are attorneys. 41% are in Congress.
Yes, yes, of course.
So they know how to tip it the other way. The guy who played Tootsie is very, very good at changing his voice. whose name
Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman. He is great at really becoming the character. Another one is the guy who was in Witches of Eastwick. I should have written down these guys' name. Of changing their voice to really become the character. That's some kind of method acting, I think. But you can use this in the law. You can use it. That's what we do in the film department. We change or try to change people's voices to fit the character. If you had a great big football player that in the beginning of the film was this big husky guy, but by the end of the film he was sick and had AIDS, then we would know that we need to take the frequencies of C and B out of his voice to make him appear weak to the people watching the film.
Okay. Hey, I have a question. Can you do voice analysis and discover whether, how can I put this, more controversial topics, like could you analyze whether, wildly speculating that today's Paul McCartney is the same Paul McCartney as in the early 1960s?
We've looked at that. It's close, but they don't seem to match.
And when you do that analysis, what do you discover? How would you know what a match is and a non-match?
Are the voices similar in the distance between the notes? That's a biggie when you're trying to identify somebody, which we've done in court when there's been attempted blackmail and people try to disguise their voice. Even though they can make the voice sound different, the distance between each of the frequencies in the voice stays consistent.
That's interesting. Does it stay the same over years? I mean, do you think that you talk the same way now as you might have 30 years ago?
Probably not, because nutrition can play a part. Getting older, and I'm near 70, can play a part in slowing down your voice a bit. We looked at Jerry Sandusky's voice for a legal team, and we were able to tell them the exact word that he was using to show that he thought his behavior was correct, and that's likely means that somebody did this to him. He's the guy at Penn State who was messing with young boys in the shower. The word was horseplay. Every time he said the word horseplay, his whole voice scattered. So he knew on some level that it was wrong, but he convinced himself. He was on two totally different layers with nothing in between. So it was like two lives. That vocal print is under profiles. I think it's under In the News on our site. They can go read it and look at the graph, and we pointed out what makes him somebody not telling the truth. So Jerry Sandusky, we've done. Chris Christie, we did, and knew that he was not guilty of the bridge thing before it was put out. There's a lot of things. UFO things are there. Gaddafi, we predicted exactly how that was going to go down.
So I guess I have a question with this. How can I put this? Can you tell are there signs if someone might have a split personality or have undergone something like mind control, trauma-based programming or something?
We can't tell the difference between mind control and programming. If they have any string attached to reality, that'll show in their chart. But we've only been able to do 2 split personalities. They do show 2 different octaves, but we just don't have enough data to say this is what it really looks like. Dissociative personalities, we can see those a lot. Dissociative, like a medium that's doing a reading, somebody that's just a little bit out of touch with reality. But the voice will look very scattered over several octaves. And there are little squares all over this grid. And if you can't jump to each of the numbered grids that are filled in, then it's a scattered voice. That's hard to describe. Here's a grid. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 layers high and 12 layers across. And so the voice, every time you say how, now, brown, cow, it fills in something on this grid with a little number, and it counts the number of frequencies, not the words, the frequencies, phonemes, sound bites that you say. And then you look at how it's scattered. Like right now, I'm looking at Carly Fiorina, and she has a score of 152 in G sharp. And that's just way overdone. And that means ability to get plans into fruition. And I don't want to say something bad about Carly Fiorina or any of them, but most of her information is in the male octave. So she either has a male-like personality, a take charge and get it done kind of personality, or she has some hormonal issues.
Okay.
I don't want to get in trouble for saying this is female and this is male. There's another one that shows this quite readily. Lisa, I think her name's Lisa Fayed, Fayed, and this one profile is on our site. She went on Fox TV against a guy named Bill Baxel, who was kind of a stumbling, bumbling, didn't have his speech together. And she came off very, very incredibly polished. And she was talking about parents shouldn't get upset because the state of California wants to give your kid Gardasil. Because if you had a good relationship with them, they'd tell you anyway. And, in Texas, what was it? 18 girls died from this Gardasil shot. So in Texas, 12 years old and older, they don't have to tell their parents. And Lisa Fayed, all of her stuff was up in Fantasy Money. She had no foundation whatsoever. Paying her to say this. And here, or at least bioacoustically, that's what it indicated. And here's this Bill Blaxel, who's kind of stumbling and bumbling. If it was my child, I'd want this. And he had such a solid foundation. He was the one telling the truth. So if you doubt anybody, just grab this little software program and check it out. We've given you enough information to know how to interpret it and what's true and what's not. And if you don't think you have enough, just join one of our classes. We have a 2 days now, workshop coming up, the 5th and 6th of November. And they'll get the software. They'll get the 2 days of classes. And it's online, or they can come and stay with us on site. But it's incredible what we want to give people so they can study this Alzheimer's and what's coming up in recognition of the flu shots that these older folks are getting. I can give you that link if you want to put it up on your site someplace.
Yeah, you can send it to me after the show, and we'll put it with the YouTube links and such.
Okay.
One other related question would be, in the last few years, at least in the U.S., we've kind of been overwhelmed with crisis actors and staged events. Have you analyzed these actors' voices, performances, and any thoughts on that? Can you tell that somebody's acting, for example? A professional actor, or is there just this broad category of this is deception? Or anyway, any thoughts on this? What do you run across?
I can't tell when somebody like Robin Williams is lying or playing another person, because he's just so good and so convincing. And we did that in a couple of things that he was doing on Ellen DeGeneres' show. So we compared the Tootsie speech with the speech on Ellen DeGeneres, and they were incredibly different in the predictive part of the voice. And that's pre-reality, and that's where you're going to be looking, is this the same person?
Okay, let's say somebody comes on TV and says, smiling, happy, no tears, and says, my poor brother who was gunned down in the prime of life would want us to learn positive lessons from this and ban guns or something. Are there characteristics from that voice that make it stand out to you, that you can say this is not a true, sincere person?
Yeah, there's something. It's hard to listen. It's once you learn this, you'll never unlearn it. But there's a jitter in the voice normally, and when that jitter goes out of the voice, they're lying or they're not telling the truth. But it really has to be something that they have some conviction about. They just can't say, my dog died, 10 years ago or something. It's got to be something that they're invested in. So we can't tell 100% of the time. It's topic specific.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I just see how we're kind of being overwhelmed by, I guess I would just say, insincerity on television.
Yes.
I mean, it's poor acting. I mean, it's not even like they're acting. It's like they're not even trying to acting. And I'm wondering, do you see a change, or is there something? A question before I forget. This is important. I live outside the U.S., and when I visit, the television, but most particularly the news, basically makes me ill. And I'm wondering, do you think there are frequencies that are put in that cause irritation or something?
We did a study on this.
Oh,
when they changed from the old TVs to the new HD TVs, we did children, we did adult women, and adult males. And in every case, 20 minutes of TV, we did studies before TV and after TV. It knocks out the note of D, and D is self-approval, it's liver, it's enzymes. In every case, it knocked out the note of D. So when you look at the chart and it says D is all about self-approval and the ability to want to help others do better for themselves. So that's what you're looking at, and absolutely there is a consistency.
And a question for you. What if I watched the same show on YouTube? Would it have the same effect?
I don't know. What a great way to look at that. I can see it now. I'm wringing my hands. Case study. That would be a good thing to look at.
Because I do see a certain, not a lot, but a certain amount of, clips from the BBC or CNN or whatever that I see on YouTube. And the quality, of course, is much poorer. But in addition, I'm wondering if there's this, entrainment of evil frequencies or something, and maybe it doesn't get through the whole system, and so maybe it's not nearly as bad. But certainly the TV itself makes me ill, particularly the news programs.
A good thing about this is everybody has their own frequencies that are too high or too low in. So they called us about something they did on The Simpsons, the brown sound or something like that. And they wanted to know if there was one sound that would run everybody to the bathroom. We've never discovered that. There are sounds that run this person or that person or that person, but one for everybody, no. And the other thing that we do is teach people to listen to their own sounds so that they can block out that. So there is an article, if you can moan, you can tone. That's on our site under articles, totally free again. And you can listen to your own sounds, and that'll block out the external stuff unless it's just so incredibly loud. And it starts getting overbearing at about 12,000 cycles per second.
Okay. Well, I guess this is all something we need to take into consideration. But I would, based on our chat here, I get the feeling that you don't watch much TV.
I don't.
So maybe that's the most important advice regarding television, is to turn it off. Yeah, so are there simple things that you think will make people have better health? Like, what do you call some of those multidimensional music and the is it what's his name, Jonathan Goldman? Anyway, they're people who do kind of music with extra tones and beats in the background to kind of improve our well-being. Do you recommend any of these?
There's two people that I have seen do this that are really dealing with analog, and that's what the body speaks, analog. Steve Halpern is one of them, and Jill Madsen is the other. They both make music through the whole scale and back again. They just don't take you and leave you someplace. As a group, conductors live the longest, and they think it's because they are exposed to all of the music all of the time, and they feel it and get into it. So a good thing would be just be balanced. Listen to all the notes. Look at all the colors. Go with what you feel good looking at. Quit eating boxed food. That's a biggie right there. Food as natural as you possibly can. Get out of drinking water that has a lot of bleach in it. Here, I can turn on the spigot and smell bleach coming out with the water. Why they think that's good for people is beyond me. And join some of these groups that are anti-vaccination and informed consent. I think vaccines have done a great deal to destroy our health. But again, that's my opinion. And I've
That's at the bottom of your webpage for the Food and Drug Administration. Yes, I understand. Your lawyer approves this. Yes, of course. I understand. Well, I tell you what, Sharry, before we wrap it up, is there anything or any topic that you'd like to cover that we might not have gotten into?
Well, I want people to know that whatever is in their voice isn't right or wrong. It's just what they do with it that makes it, well, I can't even say that. We'll scrap that piece. There's nothing right or wrong in the voice. It's just what you do about it that makes the difference. And I think we're going to be putting out the flu antidotes very soon. If people want to check back on our site, and I think we're going to get to post them. We do have somebody now who does some videos for us, so I think we're going to post them either on Vimeo or YouTube. So I think these flu shots are really degrading us by way of our health. But we want to supply the tools and solutions to help people take dominion over their own health.
I guess I have one last question. Are there any machines that send sound into the body, like injured areas and stuff like that? Anything like that? And
there's a lot of them out there, and some of them great and wonderful. Somebody just sent me one yesterday that they'd been using for a pain in their hip. Boy, if it works, use it. But
anyone you're familiar with or would recommend?
This was just something on a CD that somebody had sent them. If you can get relief of symptoms from a CD, which is surprising because it's digital, go for it. But also know that if you did it analog, that you'd probably get more symptoms. And with analog, we get rebuilding of body tissue. Analog is you and I talking here over Skype. But no, digital is you and I talking over Skype. Analog is you and I talking in the same room.
Right.
So it's just
sound quality sounds so much different, but I'm sure you know that. The digital just seems to take the life out of things for some reason.
Well, it's averaged. It's just averaged. And what we look at is like sine waves. The body uses sine, square, and sawtooth waves, depending on what it wants to do for the moment. But the healing wave is a sine wave. And the distance between the peaks and the sine wave is really what's making the difference. The frequency is creating the distance, but that distance is creating a void that the body wants to pick up and use. And that's what's most important. And you don't have that with digital.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Well, I tell you what, we've had you for a fair length of time here, Sharry, and we really appreciate it. So if you could give us your website again, and we'll call it a day.
Sound Health Options, that's with an S.com. And we are rebuilding it at the moment. So let us know what you want to see and what you want us to share, and we'll try to provide it.
Okay, sounds good. Well, folks, that's it for this time. It's a wrap. Take care. Talk to you later.